real quick so you can all see. I'll start with the planning document. And just so you're aware too, our staff is going through a review period, much like you all, through September 1st, providing their feedback. I had a session with them the other day just to kind of get some feedback from department heads and the staff technical committee. And also want to let you know too that while right now I provided you this kind of 60-page draft document, I alluded to it in the email, but there is going to be some appendices that come along with this too. Those aren't included right now, but we plan to include as an appendix the environmental scan, all of the input we received from the public, any other supporting documents that we want to provide as context or further information and background so the public and anyone can see that. Any questions before I jump in? Well, we start off with just an acknowledgments page of all of you, our elected officials, our staff committee, stakeholders that were involved throughout the project, the consultants, and then we have a little thing in there about thanking the community for all their input. We do have 2 blank pages here. We're hoping to include a letter from the community committee as well as the staff technical committee. I was gonna run it by you all to see if you had any thoughts on the process for creating that. My initial thought was asking our 2 co-chairs to just draft up something short to kind of encapsulate what's occurred over this period and the intent behind the group and the motivation, and then provide it to you all for review and feedback. So if everyone's comfortable with that, I was gonna reach out to Dustin and Fanny to see if they're okay with that. Same with our staff technical committee, but we just thought it would be nice to include a short little letter about what the process we went through and the desires of the group and the motivation of the group. The plan is broke down into a couple sections. We have an introduction section, a process section that goes into all the things that we went through, the framework, which again goes back to the vision, values, and goals, and the mission, including our city services, and then that full action agenda under each goal. And then we have a few pages on kind of the implementation plan that we're doing. Introduction really goes into a lot of the stuff you see on the project website today, as well as some more context. What is the strategic plan? What is it aiming to do? Why is it important to Manhattan? A lot of the things that we've talked about in the past. We include some, what we thought were just some key things to pull from the environmental scan without, throwing in that 70-page environmental scan document, just to give everyone a feel for, some of the trends that are why we're here today. We have this process section, which just goes into all the things that we were doing, a description of the committees, the commission retreats we have, nice picture of all of you at our joint meeting, the calendar, just a lot of things about the 2 rounds of engagement that we had, how we reached out to people, and that information and all the statistics that go along with it. We jump into the framework, the vision that we discussed, the values, the goals. We, our thoughts were, how can we be to the point so it's easy for folks to know what the plan is saying, but not drone on with a lot of paragraphs and narratives. So that's kind of where we were trying to get with, how can we be to the point about how we got to the vision, the values, what they mean, the goals, and then go from there into the kind of the meat of the plan. having this kind of summary page here as you jump into the action items. Here we kind of call out sustainability in that thread that originally we had as a goal, but now we've kind of taken each action item and put a little icon near the actions. And then we go through the action agenda by goal. We list them all. We also have a draft of some metrics about how we can track over time the progress that we're seeing. These metrics came from you all, from the staff committee, from the city commission, about ways that we can track. So we go through each of those action items throughout the plan and each goal. Then we jump into this kind of core services. So we wanted to highlight too everything that the city is doing today, the services that the city is providing, and with an understanding that we have our existing services, but we also have this list of a lot of actions that we want to do, and the understanding that there are trade-offs and things that need to be vetted by the city staff, commission, and the public on an annual basis of if we want to achieve things in the action agenda, and also pursue the existing things that we're doing. We need to talk about revenues and how to fund those things, and maybe the trade-offs of cutting services or raising revenue, or however we do that, but an understanding of these are the things that we are doing today. And then we throw in our mission statement that we've reworked here. We threw in some city environmental scan data, as well as a more broken down org chart. And then we get into implementation and talk through how it's managed, how we update the plan. We intend for this to be something that we update every 5 years, but annually we're tracking, we're providing a state of the city on the strategic plan to the public, and providing an update on all of these action items. And we've kind of created a little process cycle so that staff and the public can understand where everything falls in managing this strategic plan. And then talking about how we use the plan for multiple purposes, our internal work programs and budgets that our departments create, community planning efforts. This will have a heavy influence in our capital improvement program. And then we want to be able to provide this document to the public so that they can use that for any private investment that they want to do and any engagement we do with the community. Before I jump into comments, we really didn't get I got some good feedback from the staff in our first session. There wasn't too much that really, some structural suggestions that they had. One of the key things that they mentioned was, sorry, I keep jumping around, but creating a separate page for values like we do vision and goals, just to keep them more structured, because the way that it's set up today, the values seems like a subset of the vision, which really it's kind of its own thing. So creating a separate page for that. One of the key things that recommendations that we got too was at the beginning, maybe just an executive summary. So creating an infographic of just so in case you don't want to read the 60-page document, here's the vision, the goals, and the values, and the mission, and turn it into one page so an individual could look through that, and then if they want to dig deeper, they can. So those are some of the things and feedback we're going to be giving planning next as they finalize this document. But with that, before I jump into the spreadsheet, is there any questions, comments about anything at all related to this document, and feedback that you have? And then again too, if individuals want to mark up and provide comments in this document and send it to me, welcome that as well.
Great. Just as a generic comment, I think it's well done. And then the second part is, I really like the idea of the executive summary, because most documents, particularly one as long as this one is, if you don't get an executive summary, too many people won't read it.
Yep.
And yeah, the vision thing, just the way it's displayed, I think it's just a display. Yeah, you need to bring that forward. Not the vision, the values, excuse me. Yep. You need to bring that forward somehow. I surely agree with that.
Yeah, we got that feedback too on, I showed you that core services, and the mission was kind of just tucked in there too. We got that kind of feedback too from staff that one should kind of be elevated too.
But the executive summary becomes critical. I mean, of all the times I've done this, depending on who's reading it and so on, and there ought to be a lot of people read it. Most people don't need to get into the detail. They just want to read, the upfront piece on the executive summary. So I certainly would encourage that.
Yeah, and one thing too, there's multiple ways, hopefully, that once we adopt this, we'll create a different viewing ways, because not everyone wants to just open up a 63-page PDF, right? This is a good structure and start and something to adopt. But when we revamp the Crossroads MHK webpage, we can use that executive summary and then hyperlink to certain sections. So if you want to know about the process, you can go to the process. But if you don't want to read the 7 pages about how we got to it, and you just want to talk and you just want to know about, I just came here for goal 3 about transportation and infrastructure, you can click on that one and go to there. So there will be, while this is the key true document that we're trying to include everything and adopt, we're going to try and create a more interactive web page that is much easier for the public to jump to as well.
Good idea.
Hey, Jared, I have a comment on the community assessment section on page 12, I believe it is, the housing section. In the other sections of the community assessment, I see that the text is used to provide a sort of overview of what the data points that are highlighted. So they provide a little bit of an interpretation. So right above housing, you see Manhattan is growing more diverse. And then you have data points that support that. Yeah. I think the two textual statements you have here could be data points. So we know that housing, rent is 44% more expensive in Manhattan. Something like that could be a data point, or a better data point may be to show where Manhattan ranks in rent burden or rent affordability. And similarly, you could do that for median house price. But I think probably a more useful data point in terms of the community assessment would be the percentage of homes listed that are affordable to the median household income, or the affordability, the median household income affordability, and be happy to work with you and the team on some of those data points.
Okay.
And out of curiosity, do we see how does housing factor into the city action plan here?
Yep. So we include housing in goal 3. Let me jump to it. So we talk about the housing study that we're currently conducting, and then implementing the recommendations of that plan as a specific action.
Okay, so it's included sort of in the idea of infrastructure?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Yeah. And you can see kind of here in goal 3 where we use those descriptors about neighborhoods, districts, as well as the elaborated one here, which talks about housing and supportive resources.
Hey, Jared,
Mm-hmm.
this is Ben. Maybe this is overkill or maybe it's in the addendums, but something relating back to community resources, or whether it's a website link or phone number for different resources in different sectors, whether it's housing or social services or community development, economic development. Just, I know we have a lot of organizations out there with different missions. If there's some way to tie that together and connect people who may not know where to go if they're trying to implement one of these, or who they might want to talk to.
Yeah, I like that. Any other thoughts?
Ben, Jared, this is Josh again. And like Ben was saying, this may be a little too detailed, but in the goal 3 metrics section where you're providing some possible indicators, just thinking about housing still, you list housing vacancy rates here as a possible metric. I mean, that would certainly be a metric if you're looking at the marketability of rental units in the community. But if we're looking at accessibility or suitability of market rate housing, you could look at the median home sale as percentage of median income, or you could look at the average average cost of a rental unit as a percentage of income.
Okay. Yeah, that gets probably to a more pointed metric as opposed to vacancy rates.
Yeah, and I think it depends on what your objective is there. I guess it really, your metrics would depend on probably the outcome of that housing study that you're referencing in 3.2.
And that's probably something that we could reference. So, because there are so many metrics just related to housing and a lot of these things. And over here, kind of in like what the wastewater and water, we are referring to other plans and projects that are completed. So here we could probably refer to metrics included, because that housing study is a housing and market analysis study, and it'll include a lot of those market trends and ways for us to track those year to year. So that might be a good way to, we can catch all of it and refer to those metrics in that plan.
And with 3.1, when you're talking about creating initiatives to improve neighborhoods, are you looking at neighborhood revitalization programs for specific neighborhoods, or are you looking for neighborhood programming like the I don't know, sometimes you shut down the streets and you have hot dogs and things like that? Like what sort of neighborhood programs are you looking at there?
Yeah, I think it would be more along the lines of the infrastructure. I see like block parties, for example, that second example you said, seems to would fall in like goal 4 as a sense of place, which I think we kind of included that neighborhood MHK revitalization, which is more of like a social connection, whereas this one is a more and it could be looped into the housing study, and maybe we flip these two from 3.2 and 3.1 so the order kind of makes more sense. But that's where I would see that those things like neighborhood revitalization would be in that area. One thing I did want to jump or bounce off the group was jump to it real quick. So goal 5, we talk here about accountable government, and a lot of the descriptions and the actions are related to being engaging, being transparent, being bringing forth information to the public. We have a few things in here that are really financially related, like certain funds and things like that, which could lend itself back to that goal 1, which is more how the organization runs. So our staff did kind of have since we're kind of have these two areas, there was one recommendation of changing this to a connected government, and you can move that financial stuff into goal 1, which is more operations, monetary type things, from a financial accountability and fiscally healthy description. But then a connected government gets back to the things like how we make decisions, how we engage the public, a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion action items that we have, accessibility, those things. So didn't know if anyone had any thoughts about that. That's the one, this kind of goal 5, it keeps floating around about how do we get this right and make sure that we're not trying to include too much, but this is an important thing that the community has talked about, that we want to make sure, we don't want to write it off. So how do we get it in the right phraseology and terminology? So one recommendation was turning this to a connected government, which is more so us, the city and the public, and how we work together on this plan. Whereas, yes, of course, the goal 1 is a well-run organization and it involves the public, but it's more so how we operate.
Jared, I think that's a good idea. There's a big piece of what we want the city to do that involves that financial piece in taking care of what's already there in regards to employees and programs and equipment and technology. Because if you don't keep up with those things, then you're always chasing your tail. So I think that's a great idea to move that into that financial arena. And then I wondered, do we have all of these other committees that serve for like the Social Service Committee, the Parks and Rec Committee? I know they report out as you get closer to the end of this budget season, but do they report out quarterly on the things that are happening or the recommendations that are going on in each one of those committees? Is there anything like that exists?
Not so much from the advisory board and committees, because most of those are funneling to the city commission for an adoption. So the actions that they take go a step further, and the commission takes an action on it, and then we report out as the city and what the commission has approved. But there certainly could be, an opportunity for the board to provide updates and on the actions that they are considering and those recommendations. They do that in the way of all those boards take minutes and provide minutes on the actions that they take and the votes and all of that, but not necessarily in like a quarterly reporting function.
Okay.
I think as far as moving those those financial operations goals into goal 1, I think that's a great idea. And it also allows you to really think about in goal 5, what is a connected government look like? In which areas are we struggling with citizen engagement? I think, Patricia, you bring up the committees. I think that would be a good opportunity. That could possibly be one of these objectives, is to better communicate committee service opportunities to the general public. And it could be a metric that you could measure success based off of as well, is number of people volunteering for those committees, possibly new members signing up for those committees. And another possible metric would be public comment, some sort of engagement metric. I know that there's a lot of citizens that, I'm certainly one of them, that's a little confused about how things move from the working session to the city commission session, and what that process looks like. But I think that there's a lot of room for that, for goal 5, to really focus in on that engagement piece with the community.
Jared, adding to what Josh was saying about how that connects, how it moves out of the committee to the commission, is that something you could add to that Manhattan, what do they call that group, where you go and this Citizenship Academy?
Yeah.
Like, I attended that, but I don't think we went through a scenario like that. Here's how this comes out of a community advisory group to the city commission, how it impacts the budget. That would be probably a good place to add that, and something you're already doing.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, an action item we should create within this, because it is something that both of you are saying that I've heard from the public about just the process, and it makes sense to us because we're talking about it every day and we're trying to create an agenda for every Tuesday. But it's another thing for someone to just be like, wait, how did this get on the agenda? When did it start? What was the process? Because a lot of times even it goes through that advisory board process, and there's a feedback, but then someone may not know about it, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, how did this occur? And even just explaining, in detail, like this is how it got to this point, I think is important.
Jared, this is Ben again.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I disagree just slightly in that I think budgeting perhaps deserves its goal of its own. I think it's just too large of an item and too important of an item on how we implement everything, that you could almost, this is just my opinion, pull out decision making, policy making, and push that into goal number 1, and budgeting stays in number 5. I think there's quite a bit of disconnect between the public and maybe staff just on how budgeting occurs how our tax dollars are spent, what it means if we support one program and not another. And it's something that affects everybody. I think it's just too big of an item to intermix with other, or maybe it gets watered down if we move it elsewhere. But that's just my opinion.
One thing that I did forget to mention that I got some feedback on was at one point we have our goal, which is kind of that, overarching desired outcome, and then we jump to the actions, which there are a lot in many cases. But using some type of objective or theme to chunk these up, we thought would be helpful, so that again, back to that graphical representation. So I'll use goal 1 as an example. The recommendation was, working with planning next to, because this is all, again, a lot of text. So how could you graphically represent this? A well-run city organization, and then what themes are under this? And the themes I'm reading here are modernization, competitive opportunities for employees, training, and then you could have like a budget one, or and then you go into the next goal, and you just have these key objectives or themes that you could use as subheaders within these areas, so it doesn't get necessarily, a lot of these could get watered down, kind of like you were saying, so that okay, so what are the, under strong and diverse local economy, what are the actions related to diversifying in the employment base? And then you kind of have these themes, so it's again more clear, concrete. You kind of have that summary graphic of, here's the goal, here's all the the themes that we're trying to accomplish, and then having each action under it. So I don't know if that maybe helps as some of these goals get kind of bigger and the action items get listed. You don't want stuff to get lost, and you want it to be clear that, for example, a well-run city organization, what are we trying to achieve with this goal? It looks like modernization, recruitment and retention, professional development, and whatever that term is for the budget. That's kind of the idea that we had, that we're going to try and work with planning next to make it a little bit more hierarchical, and then you can have that understanding of what are the key things. And then again, it gets back to the comment I was talking to Phil about. If you get to that point, like, I'm interested in goal 1, but I want to know what we're doing about the budget. That's where you just jump to that budget section.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Jared, this is Linda. It feels to me that if we move the budget stuff to goal 1, that it needs to be reworked a little bit, because it doesn't fit as it's defined now. It just doesn't seem that it fits very well in there. And there's some many other things that I do think it needs to be chunked up into objectives, perhaps. And perhaps that an objective specific to that could be added. But as the goal is set right now, it doesn't fit to put the budget there as I see it.
Yeah, we would definitely need to. That's a good point, because you don't want to move around actions, but then read the description and it not be referenced in it at all. And that's the thing too, that before we go out with that public version and move things around, you want to make sure that every theme and framework, it threads throughout the document, so it always makes sense. Kind of when you read one thing and then you read the actions, like you're talking about, if we keep goal 1 the same and then we have 4 action items about the budget, yeah, that'll confuse people. So that's a great point.
And I think, going a little bit off of Ben's comment, when in goal 5 we have items like develop a more efficient and predictable budgeting process, but also build and maintain adequate reserves in the general fund. I think maintaining your general fund reserves is a operational issue. So that I definitely would say should be moved to the first goal. But the budgeting process itself, I think, is one of the most important ways that the city could engage with the community. As a young Joe Biden said, "Show me your budget, and I'll show you your priorities." I think it's a really great way to communicate. But I agree with Ben; it's not one that most citizens feel that they can engage in. I know there's been some groups that have suggested different processes, things like participatory budgeting and other ideas. So I would be in favor of moving the financial operations to the first goal, but keeping the budgeting process items in the fifth.
Yeah, I think I do agree. I think there's a clear, one deals with just, yeah, kind of how the money is allocated, spent, the planning, the funds, how we operate. And then there's the process part of it, which is how do you connect with the community and engage them on the budget so they understand what's happening, why things are happening, how they came to be. Yeah, and Ben, to your point, I agree. I definitely don't want to move budget in a way that it's getting lost. Because again, that was something it was a theme from the public, and it came up, and that's why it's in here today.
Well, I think, we're probably saying the same thing. I think each of these items represent different feedback from the community, and people can differ on that. Reasonable people can differ, that's fine, but how we get there and understanding that and how we pay for that's a really important piece, irregardless of which initiative you're funding or implementing. So I just, it's too important. I think it's got to have something stand out, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, what would you see as some metrics to measure that if it were its own standalone section?
In terms of budgeting?
Yeah.
Josh, that's a really good question. Thanks for putting me on the spot. I don't know. I give that some thought, but I think that's a good question. And admittedly, I didn't read I think at the end of it, we have how we hold it accountable or how we measure this. And I don't know if that's captured there or not, but
yeah, we do talk in that implementation section about how we manage this plan and how it incorporates within our annual budgeting process and our city processes. Yeah, the engagement is always a difficult metric because, even like the public comment one, Josh, that's always a good one, because having a lot of public comments could mean we got out the word and people were engaged, or it was just a controversial topic or something like that. So it's always, and then no public comment could mean, well, everyone agreed and they just thought it was okay. And but there are ways to gauge, how in tune, and we can even do that stuff with like our community survey was a good example that we do every 2 years. We can gauge by asking the public how much they know and understand the budgeting process, and as that increases, we can maybe feel more comfortable that we're reaching more people and that they understand what's going on. The more confusion that you get from those results lets us know, yeah, people still don't get what we're doing and how it's done.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned the various boards. I know the CIP went to the planning board a couple of weeks ago, and just like those touch points for public engagement, a public hearing was open. There weren't any comments, but at the same time, who really pays attention to the CIP budget at the planning board level? But there are engagement opportunities like that. Maybe just people aren't aware. And how you push that message out, that's really difficult. But there are some touch points that are along the way that maybe people aren't aware of.
I think that's true. I know, being new to Manhattan just for a few years, I know a little bit more about some things because I've looked for it. I've sought out that information. But if you didn't necessarily seek it out or had a need for it, then I don't know that it's necessarily in your purview. But it's kind of one of those things. It doesn't matter until it matters to you.
Well, any other feedback on this document? Well, let me bring up that spreadsheet too, just so you can see that.
Hey, Jared, one other thought.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I'm just talking a lot.
No.
I don't know if it belongs in this document, but I think there needs to be a continued push for public engagement opportunities in person. I mean, this Zoom's pretty handy, but I've been on a couple of these with a few of you folks on here. I know Josh and I had a few breakouts with our team in the beginning, and I just feel like you have better conversations, you get a lot farther, and you're able to engage and kind of feed off of each other a little bit and understand perspective. I don't know if it belongs in here, but I think in-person public engagements are important, and that we just don't automatically rely on Zoom because it's the easy thing to do. So I'll be quiet now.
No, I certainly agree. Sorry, the lights turned off. I sure wish that we didn't do this one during the pandemic, and having these Zoom meetings was. I just wish we all could have been in a room, and the ability to break out and discuss. And I think those who attended that joint meeting with our staff technical committee could attest to that. It was nice to be able to sit down, talk, elaborate, go through things. Even here, we're limited because of Kansas Open Meetings Act. We can't even use the chat feature, which is frustrating in and of itself. So, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Well, I sent this spreadsheet out, which goes over all of this stuff is everything that's in the plan document. So you don't really, if you have comments on these specific actions in the text, you can throw that in that PDF that you send me. But this one is really this will be attached as an implementation matrix, as an appendix to this plan. It'll be guided by, it's for staff to understand who's the key leader on these, as well as the public, if they have interest in. And then again, if we can get a more interactive document or web page, this can all flow together. So you can, if you click on an action, all of this information will be there, so you're not jumping back and forth. But we've identified kind of the key departments and support groups. We throw in these things about do these have budget impacts, or are they more operational or capital? And then right now we have this prioritization that's broken down into three areas: critical, which is something to do now. You know, it's something we want to do within the first year or so of this plan. Important, which is something to do we want to start thinking about it, but we understand that we can't do everything at once, right? So we know we want to do it in year 2 or 3 of this plan, and then desirable is more of like, this is something we want to definitely achieve, and we heard it, but it may take some more time and resources and planning. So it's kind of that more 4-year outlook. So we took an initial shot at it just based off of public feedback and committee feedback, myself and planning next. But then we plan to do during the public outreach or public review of the draft plan, we're trying to create a little survey that people can provide their own prioritization to see if those things match up. So this one is really just draft format. We're hoping to get some more feedback, but that is kind of the threshold that we're working off of from that critical, important, desirable matrix.
Hey, Jared, at what point will you show this to the staff? Because this really becomes almost a city manager saying what one of the deputy whomever, and along with each of the department heads, saying this needs to be the most important thing, or critical, what do you call it? Critical, important, and desirable. I mean, they've almost got to make these decisions as much as anybody else does.
Yeah, we have this in front of staff right now too, and department heads, because yeah, they know we do want to get that feedback from the public about what's most important to them, but we do also have to have the understanding of we can't make everything critical, or nothing will get done. We'll drown in that, and we got to be able to space this stuff out and understand the financial impacts, the staffing impacts. So yeah, ultimately this is something that, you know, we're going to vet, and because we definitely don't want to put out a prioritization that's way too ambitious that we know we can't achieve.
And we the public don't have a complete understanding of each of these items from the perspective of what you just said, budget or staff, particularly staff. I mean, you know, if the public works guys are short 4 guys, they might not be able to deal with it. I'm making this up, but they might not be able to deal with it for a year or something.
Yeah. Yeah, we certainly wanted to provide this framework to you all, so you kind of knew where we were headed on that implementation matrix, and how we're looking at those prioritizations.
Jared, I think we experienced some of this the staff issues over the summer. You know, we weren't able to open all the pools, and it wasn't necessarily even because there wasn't enough staff, but maybe there wasn't staff with the knowledge to be available at all the locations to get everything up and going at the same time. And, you know, so even though we have a park that has a pool, because we weren't staffed appropriately, or we had staff leaving and other people maybe didn't know how to pick up the work that was left behind, then it creates that deficit in all those different areas. So making sure that the staff have the ability to get all the training, they're compensated correctly, you know, working smarter, not harder where they can, that's important.
Any other feedback from the group? Okay, well, I can definitely give you all a little time rebate. Not first time we're not going till 8 p.m. tonight, so enjoy the evening. Please, if you do have specific comments that you want to dive into that document, let me know. Go right ahead. From a punctuality and grammar perspective, Rachel in our office, she already combed through the document and provided all that. But if you like to do that too, you can certainly. But I think she pretty much caught everything. But definitely would appreciate any comments y'all have by September 1st, because then we're going to try and turn around over that week and finalize that document for the public.
So, Jared, could you quickly review what is next? This is draft, so what's next? So you get to the final document.
Yeah, let me pull up my that timeline I sent out. So here we are in our first plan, draft plan review period through September 1st. And then we're going to turn around with planning next and kind of finalize that first draft for public review. We plan to open that on the 10th for a 2-week, almost 2.5-week period. So we're going to have an opportunity on the project website for folks to review that and provide comment, as well as that prioritization engagement opportunity. And then we do plan to do a public open house. So we're looking at Thursday, September 16th. Would appreciate any committee members who would like to come to that. But what we plan to do is kind of like we did that round 2 engagement, create some boards with some of the themes, not hand everybody the 60-page document, but really go into all those details so we can talk through those things with them, talk about actions of the plan and all that, and just take feedback from the public in that way. So we are planning on doing an open house type event Thursday, September 16th. After that, we have a work session with the City Commission where we're going to go over that draft document that was presented to the public and include some of the feedback. Our Planning Next plans to do some rolling calculations and analyzing of the public feedback. So we're going to turn around with that September 28th work session to provide an overview of that draft plan as well as the feedback that we got. And then during that time too, Planning Next will be revising kind of what we're calling a final draft through October. And then we do plan to come back October 4th, and we'll send you all, along with the staff, kind of the final draft that we've created. And that way we can turn around on October 19th. It'll again be a discussion item, but it'll be a City Commission review of the final draft plan and the implementation plan. That way we can take any last, we don't have to present it to them and make them vote on it, but we can take any last feedback and then come back at a later date and adopt the plan in November. That's looking like the final schedule. I'll be sure to keep reaching out to you all and again letting you know about this public review period and then that open house.
Thanks, Jared.
You bet. Again, please reach out if you have any questions, and feel free to send along any of those comments in those documents.
Oh, coincides well with the city election, huh?
Yeah, just perfect, huh?
Yeah, I mean, look at your dates, November 2nd through 16th, right?
We'll know who's on the commission then. Yeah, starting in January for sure. That'll
All
be
right.
timing then. If we do have new folks, then we'll be able to orient them right on January 1st when they get sworn in, and we can tell them, hey, here's the strategic plan.
Is the contractor done?
No, they're still working with us. They just weren't available tonight. Yeah.
Do they work all the way through your final
Yeah.
plan?
Mm-hmm. Yep. They're continuing, and they're the ones creating this document and all of this information. So I'm still continuing to provide them the feedback, and they'll present to the city commission during those nights.
Okay. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate all of your guys' input tonight.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Jared.